Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into this episode of the SpookNotes podcast, where we get academic about everything that goes bump in the night. My name is Marlena.
And I'm Connor.
And on this week's episode...
Well, we're going to be talking about our top 5 favorite horror movies of all time.
And the reason we're doing this is because we have actually just celebrated our 1-year anniversary as of...
April 15th.
April 15th.
So yeah, it's April 15th, 2019. And on April 15th, 2018, we started this podcast.
Yeah.
We did our first ever introduction episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then we followed it up with the Texas Chainsaw episode.
We sure did.
So it's been a year. We've had about 19 episodes. We've changed the podcast a little bit. We've had a guest.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of movies. And
that's true.
We wanted to celebrate a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if any longtime listeners remember, in our very first introduction episode, we kind of shared, I think we shared our favorite horror movies, but it was kind of very spur of the moment and just casual, and I think we only shared maybe 1 or 2 each.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of 1 or 2 of our favorites, and we thought, well, what's something we can do for our anniversary episode? And I said, well, why don't we give a definitive list each of our top 5 favorite horror movies of all time.
However, this list is kind of subjective to the time, because we're doing it as of right now. What's our top 5? So obviously that could change a year from now.
And I think that's fine because I have my own personal horror blog that I write on. And when I first started that blog, I gave my top 5 horror movies of all time. And looking at it then and looking at what the list I made now, it's not completely different, but it is different. And that's okay, because your feelings change over time. And I guarantee you that in another year, our top 5 will probably be different from what it is now. But I think it's still important to kind of take those snapshots and look at your journey through horror and how your feelings change. But this is today our definitive list of our top 5 horror movies as of April 5th, 2019.
Yeah, and I must say I've put some considerable thought into making this list.
Yeah?
Yes.
It has to be definitive.
That's right.
Ordered
sure
and everything. So what we're going to do is, just like we did in our best of the year 2018 list, we're going to give our top 5. We're going to go back and forth. So Marlena's going to give her number 5 pick. I'm going to give my number 5 all the way down to 1. But first, we're going to start off with some honorable mentions. These are ones that didn't make the list, but we both love quite a bit.
Okay. I thought we were going to do honorable mentions maybe right before the number 1.
No, it's better. I think it's better just to get them out of the way first.
Okay. I don't know, man. I've been watching a lot of Watch Mojo, and that's kind of my inspiration for this podcast, but whatever. We can do it that way, too. Sounds cool.
Okay, so, I guess...
And there's no, particular order for these honorable mentions, right?
The honorable mentions I didn't put in order. But we each have 2, and, just movies that didn't quite make our top 5 list.
Okay.
Well, do you have anything else to say before we start?
Nope.
All right, well, without further...
And obviously, sorry guys, really quick, we haven't shared our list with each other, so this is kind of the first time I'm hearing Connor's list, and vice versa.
So, yeah. Well, actually, before we do start, let me ask you this, Marlena. Do you think our lists are going to be similar?
I think they're going to contain a few of this, the same movies, but in order, I don't think it's going to be, anywhere the same.
So do you think that it'll contain all the same movies?
God, no.
No, I don't think so either.
I think maybe 1, at most 2.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know. I think I'd maybe say yes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of what yours would be and compare it to mine in my head, but I don't know. I guess we'll have to see.
Okay.
All right, so without further ado, Marlena, why don't you go first? Your 2 honorable mentions.
So are we going to do 1 each, or just going to do, these are my 2 and these are your 2?
Why don't you say these are your 2 and explain why, and then I'll give my 2.
Okay. So my honorable mentions are The Thing.
Okay.
And Dawn of the Dead.
Oh. Before you go any further, Dawn of the Dead was a very, very, very close to being one of my honorable mentions.
Yeah, me too. To
being one of my honorable mentions as well.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so why?
Well, okay, for The Thing, specifically, I really like I really like the design of the movie. I really like the entire plot of it. I think that's really cool. I like the fact that the movie focuses a lot on, uh, suspense and who can you trust and who can you not trust, and just kind of like figuring it out. Like it's a mystery, right? I really like that. I thought that was very original. It has Kurt Russell, which is total babe material. I really enjoy the score for the movie. I think John Carpenter did an amazing job.
Well,
Um,
actually, he didn't do the score for that movie,
oh, you're right. Sorry, he directed the
but he directed
movie,
the movie.
but who did the score? I was thinking,
Ennio Morricone,
yeah,
who did the score for like The Good, the Bad, the Ugly,
yeah.
a lot of westerns and things like
Well,
that.
regardless, the music was good.
Yeah.
It was directed by our boy. I don't know. It was good. I really liked it.
Okay.
And for Dawn of the Dead is also another honorable mention for me, just because it focuses more on like how we got the movie and how we watched it. And you're gonna see in my list that a lot of the movies that I chose, I kind of tied towards like experiences that me and you did. Um, so for Dawn of the Dead, we actually found it at a Value Village for 50 cents. And I remember when I picked it up, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait.
I thought it was something
I was
else
like,
as
there's
well.
no way. And it was like original VHS, and I'm like, holy shit. And it was just so much fun watching something that's kind of rare to own together.
Yeah, for sure.
And like just for the movie's sake, it was really good. It is my favorite movie within the entire Dead series.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the setting of the movie, how it's in the Monroeville Mall. And our boy Tom Savini did the special effects and also is featured in the movie as well, which is like really cool. And I don't know, I just thought the whole movie had a unique story design to it. Because I don't know, when I was always a kid, I was like, oh, if there was a zombie apocalypse, like I would love to get stuck in like a mall or like a shopping center or something like that. I don't know, it just kind of played out my like fantasy as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
nice.
Yeah, those were my top two honorable mentions.
2 solid picks.
Yeah.
Nice. So for my honorable mentions, my 2 are. So I didn't really order them necessarily, but they kind of are ordered simply because one is definitely number 6 and one's definitely number 7.
Okay.
So my number 7, my first honorable mention is The Evil Dead 2.
Okay. Yep.
And my other honorable mention, that's not in my top 5. It's just an honorable mention. Is The Shining.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The Shining.
Wow, did not see that coming.
Let me put it this way. I'll talk about The Shining first. The Shining I absolutely love. It has fallen a little bit, simply because before I would have maybe said it's maybe my favorite horror movie of all time. Mm-hmm. And I still love it. Obviously, it's my number 6. And it is my honorable mention. But I think the reason it's fallen a little bit is because I just think because this is favorites, right? Not best.
Yeah.
And for favorites, there's certain things in horror that I really love. And while The Shining has a lot of those things, and I'll talk about more of them later, it has fallen a little bit for me just because I feel it's maybe a little long and stuff. But I mean, it's still a great movie. It still has amazing performances. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Stanley Kubrick's direction is, wonderful. And I won't talk about it too long because I have a strong feeling it might be on your list later on.
Oh, not at all.
But I mean, it's still, I love The Shining. And The Evil Dead 2 is my other honorable mention. Very close to being on my list as well. I love the horror comedy genre. And The Evil Dead 2 is, in my opinion, the perfect horror comedy because it is the perfect 50-50 split of horror and comedy. Mm-hmm. It's perfectly balanced in that way. It's so well directed by Sam Raimi. Bruce Campbell obviously gives a performance that, like, I think if you see it once, you'll remember it for the rest of your life.
Oh, yeah, and that's one of the movies we, like, whenever we're hanging out with our friends that don't necessarily watch horror films, we have a select list of movies that we show them, and it's always Evil Dead 2 or Friday the 13th Part 4, like, anything that's kind of just, like, fun, campy, like, so stereotypical horror, like, we just put that there.
And I think The Evil Dead 2 is also one of those movies where some movies I feel like you remember them as a whole, and some of them for like moments. Yeah. And Evil Dead 2 I think is just chock full of so many amazing moments.
Yeah, it's like a full-on experience.
So yeah, for that reason, I mean, I just love the Evil Dead. I think it's so iconic. Um, I think that it's also the perfect in that trilogy balance between like the insane gore and horror of the first one and the very slapstick humor of Army of
Mm-hmm.
Darkness.
Yeah.
Like again, like I said, it's just that perfect balance in Evil Dead 2, and it's always going to be like one of my favorites. And that character of Ash, like Bruce Campbell, is just he does such a good job, and it's so funny, but he's also such a likable character as well. He's not just played for laughs; he's still like a character that you just love
He's
to
a
see.
wholesome guy.
Yeah. So yeah, Evil Dead 2 is my other honorable mention, and it could have made my list, but it just barely didn't. I love that movie.
Hmm. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing.
All right, so do you
Right.
want to jump into our list, top
Think
five?
so. Let's get into the nitty
So,
gritty.
Marlena, what is your fifth favorite horror movie of all time?
Well, my fifth favorite movie of all time is Nosferatu.
Oh, okay.
Did you expect that?
No,
Really?
I did not.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I really really like this movie, and whenever I, kind of go back and think like what are my favorite movies? Like Nosferatu, just the imagery of, Count Orlok is very vivid in my mind. And I think the reason why it's on this list is because when was it? It was last October? Like it wasn't this past one.
October 2017.
20 Oh Jesus, holy smokes, we're getting old.
Mm.
Yeah, it was October 2017, and Connor and I, we went to a small local theater in our hometown, and we saw a live score of Nosferatu. So they played along music to the silent film, and I don't know, it did something to me. I was like, wow, like this is really cool. And like obviously just for the movie itself, like I really like the imagery, the black and white imagery of the movie. I find it's very gothic, and I don't know, just the whole character of Count Orlok is scary to me. Very scary. Like the whole like elongated, lanky um guy, and who's the actor for that? Shrek, something.
Max Schreck.
Max Shrek, and he just does an amazing job being that character with his spindly fingers and crazy walks. And it's like I don't know, it
It's
makes
very evocative.
yeah, and I don't know, I just like silent films. I find they're very scary because there's no sound. So
It adds an eeriness to it.
exactly.
That's good. I like
Yeah.
that pick.
Thank you.
Nice.
What about you?
So my number 5 pick, starting off my list, is Alien,
Oh, okay.
1979, celebrating its 40th anniversary this year.
Hey, happy birthday.
Alien is a movie that I watched very young. If you guys know anything about me, I actually only got into horror a little bit later in my life, like in my teenage years.
Yes.
Alien is one exception, though. I watched it early on when I was a kid. And I remember watching it with my brother, who was big into the Alien and Predator movies, my older brother, and my dad. And Alien is a perfect. I'm a big fan of taking a traditional genre like the slasher or like the monster movie and putting a twist on it. And if you think about it, Alien is very much a slasher film, like Halloween or Friday the 13th or something, but set in space. And what makes it different is that instead of just a guy going around killing people, the creature of the alien or the xenomorph is so unique and so terrifying that it adds an extra layer to the slasher movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because not only does it go around killing people and it kills off the crew of the Nostromo one by one, but I think another big reason why it's my number 5 pick is for the single scene of the chestburster scene.
Yep.
Like the pure horror of that, like the thought that it's some like this thing implants an egg inside of you and it's living inside of you and growing, and the way it births is through your death is like really scary to me. And I remember the first time I ever saw a chestburster, I was not expecting that, and I mean, like it just was like it blew my mind. And I was
Didn't you
like,
tell me that you like ran into the room or something
I
like
was
that?
terrified because like it's just so shocking, and I think it's the ultimate jump scare as well. Like seeing,
Well, because you're not expecting it, because you don't know, right? You think, oh, just these aliens are just born wherever, but
Mhm.
not through you, like you being an incubator for this like alien. So
And I mean, just the way it grows and becomes this. Because like the other thing about this movie is it's only one alien, but it's more like you get like three different monsters because there's the face hugger
yep.
at the very beginning, then there's the chest burster, and then obviously there's the full grown xenomorph, and even that is scary because like for most of the movie you don't ever really see all of it. It's just like in shadow and it's kind of camouflaged into the ship, and like
Well, yeah, and you don't even know how bad like how many aliens there are on board, like you don't know what's going on. Really quick question. Out of all three of the alien types, which one is the scariest to you?
well, I mean, I think the just in terms of the idea of it, I think it has to be the chest burster. But I think there's something scary about all of them, like the face hugger, the idea that it kind of like rapes you
Yeah.
and implants an egg in you, and then just obviously the full xenomorph because it, like I said, it camouflages into the ship and it like
Well, it has that big piercing tail and like acid.
and I think the other part of it is the design of it
Mm-hmm.
is so unique and original, like the tongue inside the mouth, the translucent head,
Yeah.
um, you know, and like I said, like the Evil Dead 2, it's also a movie with a ton of great moments. Like obviously the chest burster, but also like when Captain Dallas is in the air vents and then he turns around, the alien's right there, or when Ripley's on the ship at the very end and she thinks the alien's gone, and then she sees the alien like waking up out of a sleep, and it's like, or even like I remember the first time as well when you realize that the Doctor Ash is actually an android, and when it attacks Ripley, it's so like
You
you
weren't
realize that there's
expecting
something
it.
more. It's
Yeah.
something more than just a monster story. There's like the idea of this corporation that's behind it,
Yeah.
and as well, I think the characters are just awesome. Like it's so unique the way that it's like a trucker crew, but out in space and so far in the future. We've talked about it on the podcast before, but Alien is definitely. I love that movie. That's my number 5.
That's awesome.
All right, it's number 4 for
All
you.
right, number 4 for me is Halloween 1. It's the
Nice.
original Halloween. I don't know, man. There's just
You mean Rob Zombies, right?
absolutely Rob Zombie, my boy, fucking nailed it. No, I'm talking about the OG Halloween movie, directed by Tommy Lee Wallace,
John Carpenter.
John Carpenter.
But Tommy Walsh was involved.
Fuck me, man. I don't know what it is today. Maybe I'm a little tired, getting what my directors all mixed up. But yeah, so John Carpenter's Halloween, fucking beautiful film. I love the music of the movie. It's iconic. And I don't know, I just like some of the cinematography in the movie is just really like memorable for me, especially those tracking shots of Michael going, house to house, like killing people. I really, really like that because it makes you feel like you are a part of him, like you are in that moment. I also really, really like the character Laurie Strode. I think she's a very strong female character. And that wasn't quite common back then. It was more so about the male protagonist in the movie and all that, and women were just kind of like pushed to the side. But this movie, I think, went against that, and had this female be strong and empowering. And me being a woman, I like that shit. Go women. But I don't know. It's just that movie in particular ties it to a moment for me, which is around October in the Halloween season. And it's just, I don't know. When I watch that movie at any time in the year, it has the ability to pull me out of whatever I'm doing to a specific moment, and that's in October. And I really like that because October is my favorite month. And yeah, I don't know. The kills are good. Michael seeing his backstory and stuff, and I really like that.
Nice. That's a solid pick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good job.
That's it for me.
All right. My number 4 is. It's funny that your number 5 was Nosferatu, because my number 4 is Dracula.
Oh, okay.
1931.
Wow.
The Bela Lugosi Dracula. This is a movie that. Well, first off, I love all the Universal classics. I just think that something about watching those movies, those black and white, ones that are gothic with the fog and everything like that, is so perfect. And Dracula is my favorite of all of them. Large part because of Bela Lugosi, because I think his performance as Dracula is like, I mean, from 1931 to 2019, whenever you do an impression of Dracula, it's always going to be with
Dracula.
with that accent, with
it's It's very memorable, iconic.
I think that it's interesting that one actor from 1931 could make a performance that is still relevant today and will always be relevant. I don't think from now until the end of time, if you do an impression of Dracula, it's going to ever change from that Bela Lugosi version.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to how good his performance is and how iconic it is. And a big part of my love of Dracula as well is that I think that the opening scene of Renfield going to Dracula's castle is like that is like the epitome of like horror for me, of like gothic horror specifically.
Yeah. No,
Because
for
it's
sure.
like that imagery and like, you know, the castle and then Dracula's speech about the wolves howling, and it's like so iconic. And then what Renfield turns into with like the kind of crazy, he's like wanting to eat flies and mice and things like that.
Yep.
It's so interesting. And then obviously showing him back in like modern civilization, like how Dracula acts then, and he's kind of like this foreign stranger who like is kind of scary because he is different than everybody else and nobody really knows anything about him, but he kind of seduces these women, and it's kind of the idea of the fear of the other and
Mm-hmm.
how big that was back in the 30s. And because he represents a little bit something of like the old country of like Europe
Yeah.
coming into the new world.
It's like immigration, fear of like being taken over.
Yeah. Even though it still takes place in London, it's like just that idea of like the old like more uncivilized world coming into like the modern day society and how that changes things. And I also think that Bela Lugosi's Dracula is good because the biggest figure, the biggest thing people looked at of Dracula beforehand was Nosferatu when it was more of a monster, and now he's more of a like a civilized like gentleman almost. But behind that, you know,
That curtain, that mask.
he still is the monster.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love that idea, and I just think like I said, the imagery in it is iconic, and it's the performances as well. It's those two things I think that are the biggest thing: the performances and the imagery that make it so iconic. And I think it's one that you can always go back to and watch. And it is, even though it's not like a Halloween or a trick or treat, it's something that I feel like is so appropriate to watch during that October season because
Yeah.
it brings you back to that kind of when like the nights get a little colder and maybe
the fear of the unknown.
Yeah. And I think it captures it so perfectly. So Dracula is my number 4.
Nice. Little side note, guys. It just started thundering and lightning right now. I don't know if you saw that, but I saw that. And I'm like, oh wow, this is kind of perfect. Because we're doing our spooky podcast. Okay. Whatever.
I'm on top 3. Number 3.
My number 3 is Creepshow.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Did you see that one coming?
No.
Really? Okay.
No, I didn't.
All right. Let me explain why. It has all of our favorite people wrapped up nicely in this movie. First off, it's directed by George A. Romero, which is iconic, and he's awesome. The screenplay was written by none other than our Stephen King boy. It has, holy shit, Tom Adkins in it. Tom Savini's in it, also does the special effects. Adrienne Barbeau is in it. Like,
the list goes on and
yeah,
on.
like, there's so many people in this movie that we both like so much. And, just talking about the movie itself, I really, really like it because it's so original. Like, there is no other movie that I can think of that really follows the same trend. Obviously, there are movies that are anthology and stuff, but not kind of like this. This is more like classic comic book anthology, and just even the animation in the movie is really interesting and different, and I really like that. But the stories are just so vivid and so out there. I really, really like it. You have the movie or the particular segments from like the crate, like the imagery of what is it called? The Thing?
Fluffy.
The Fluffy. And then you have the sea creatures. Like what do they call it? Like those people in the water.
Yeah. Well, the story is something to tide you over.
Yeah, something to tide you over, and it's like just really interesting little montages like those. Just make it really nice for me. And also because you introduced me to this movie and we got to see it on the big screen again at the same theater. And I don't know, it's just like a whole like kind of experience that I got to share with you, and we got the pleasure of meeting some of the people, which
Mm-hmm.
was really cool in my opinion.
Yeah, a few of the people from
Yeah,
it.
yeah, we met
Tom's
Tom
Tom
Sav-
Atkins.
blah, listen, Tom Adkins, Tom Savini, and we saw Adrienne Barbeau speak at a panel,
Mm-hmm.
and we're feet away from her, so it's like we were meeting her, but like not really. So I don't know. It's just really cool seeing the people that you have seen in person on the big screen.
Nice.
I really like that. You know, it really does something for me.
Nice.
All right.
My number 3 pick is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay.
It is my favorite slasher movie.
Mm-hmm.
It is the highest slasher movie on this list. It's my favorite one. And the reason it's so high is because it is, of all the horror movies on my list, the one that is the most real. It is the most horrifying for me because, sure, other things are scary like vampires and things we've discussed, monsters and whatnot, aliens, but none of those things could really happen in real life. This is something that is real. And I remember the first time I saw it, it was when I first got into horror movies, it was one of the first ones that I checked off my list that I knew was going to be a big one. And it was the first movie that I saw, because I saw like, before that I saw Friday the 13th and Halloween and things like that. But what Texas Chainsaw does differently from all of them is that it makes it almost feel like you're watching a documentary or you're watching like crime footage or like
Like a
something
snuff
made about
film.
yeah,
Yeah.
because the low budget filmmaking makes it seem so real. The opening of the movie, that opening like narration and
And like the sound, or like the
the
soundtrack.
yeah
Yeah.
uh and the way it builds up to that horror and the whole dinner scene at the end, I think is just that is like pure terror to me because it's like there's no escape. Well, I mean, she does escape, but there's no like reasoning with these people. There's no like anything. They're just insane, and they're going to kill you. And
Well, they're hungry people. They want
yeah,
food. You know.
and it's obviously we did it as our first movie we ever did on this podcast.
Yeah.
But it will always be like one of my favorites, and I think that the other thing about it though is despite all that, despite how like disgusting it is and everything, and how like the set design of the movie is brilliant with the house and all the weird shit that's in the house.
Mm-hmm.
It is at the same time like weirdly beautiful to look at. Like some of the shots are like
Oh yeah, especially when you go into like parts of like the living room and they have all the bones and stuff. Like for me, I don't know, I'm pretty weird. I collect bones and taxidermy, so like I saw them like oh, wow, I like that.
yeah, so it's like it has this weird like beauty to it
Yeah.
and like the other thing is that in other horror movies like Halloween, like the idea is that Michael Myers is pure evil. But for Leatherface, who I think is just as iconic as like Michael or Freddy or Jason,
Mm-hmm.
is that when you see him and you get that one brief moment. One of my favorite moments in the entire film is after he kills the second kid, the one with the disco haircut, or maybe that's the third kid. Yeah, I think it's the third kid. He's like he just like goes and he runs around in the living room and he sits down for a second and he's like patting his head and you understand that even though he's not like very bright, he's just worried. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know why these kids keep coming into his house. And it's not that he's evil and he wants to murder as many people as he can. It's that this is his home and he's trying to protect
Yeah,
his home
it's
and
yeah,
he just doesn't understand what's going on.
yeah,
So I think that's really terrifying. And like I said, Leatherface, just the idea of like this like guy running at you in the dark with a chainsaw going and he's wearing like another human's dried face on top of
yeah.
his.
That's really gross. And obviously, this is loosely based off of the real life serial killer Ed Gein.
Very loosely.
Yeah, but still, you know, it's been done. People do wear faces, other people's faces as faces, and it's just ugh,
And at the end of the
gross.
day, I think the best thing about it is because it is about something else. Like there's obviously so many interpretations of it, and I think the best movies are that, and it has so many unique ideas in it. Like the idea that like the different masks Leatherface wears are like his different personality. Like
Yeah,
he wears the pretty woman mask when he's like eating dinner and he wants to dress up. He is like the old lady grandma mask. Like
yeah.
I just think there's so many interesting ideas in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I think it's
Well, there's like also a lot of different layers to the movie, right? From a political standpoint, from a character standpoint, like having a sense of no personal identity, that he has to wear all these different faces and
mhm,
stuff. There's layers to this movie, and both Connor and I, we really like these films that can kind of be analyzed in a different light,
mhm.
in a more critical view.
And I think Texas Chainsaw does that
Yeah, and well,
immensely.
that's why we did it as one of our first
That's our first.
yeah, what were they, like academic like breakdowns and stuff like that. Yeah,
Mm,
those were fun.
yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, so that's my number 3.
cool. I'm
Okay,
just
Marlena,
confining in my list here, even though
this is it. Your second favorite, your penultimate horror movie of all time.
okay, this one is a more recent horror movie.
Oh God, I think I know what it is.
My number 2 is Hereditary.
Okay.
I freaking love this movie. I love it. There is nothing wrong with this movie. I definitely like Ali Aster's, style of directing and his like new ideas, and I don't know, it's not when I saw this movie with you, it was nothing that I've ever seen before. And I think that's why it stands out so vividly in my mind. I don't know, I guess I'm just gonna go through all the elements of the movie. The music in the movie is insane because it makes you feel something. And because we saw it in theaters and it was kind of like in your face music, it really made me uneasy to watch, to the point where I almost wanted to cover my ears cuz like it was just the sounds and like the frequencies. I was like, "Oh my god, this is actually making me anxious."
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a lot for me, for somebody who watches a lot of creepy shit and scary movies. It takes a lot to scare me and to get under my skin. And that got under my skin. So the music, the imagery, especially the one scene where the mom, she's upstairs sawing her head off with like, what was it, like a wire or something?
Like a piano wire.
Piano wire. Like, like it almost makes me want to gag because it's not even just the imagery, it's the sounds that go with it, that sawing motion, and it's I don't know, man. That movie just really got to me. And obviously, I like a movie that can be kind of like dissected and trying to get to all these like different themes to it and whatnot. And I could just go on and on about the movie Hereditary in terms of like breaking it down by the different themes and layers to the movie. Um, I don't know. I thought the acting in the movie Hereditary was like superb, especially from the
Tony
mother,
Collette.
Toni Collette. She just did an amazing job, especially during the scene at the dinner table when you have her screaming at her son. That was one of the best moments of acting I've ever witnessed. Like, her emotion is so raw and it's so believable that it almost makes you step back and you're like, holy shit, like, wow, like I felt something. Obviously, there's great performances from other members of the cast as well, like who plays Charlie and who plays what was his name, Peter.
I think so, yeah.
Peter, yeah, great actors, great young actors, and I think they have a lot of potential to grow even more, especially in the horror genre. And I don't know, I really, really appreciate Ali Aster doing such a great job with this movie.
Isn't it Ari Aster?
Ari Aster, fuck me, man. I'm so sorry, guys.
No,
I'm really tired, and I just don't. I can't even speak clearly. Yes, Ari Aster. Should have corrected me the first time.
I forgot. I thought it was Ari Aster.
Ari Aster. Yeah, and he has this new movie, Midsommar, coming out. And I don't know. After seeing the movie Hereditary, I'm really, really excited to see this movie.
Yeah, so, I mean, I liked it a lot too. It was my favorite movie of 2018, so that's saying something.
Oh, there you go. But yeah, that kind of ties it up as being my number 2 pick for my list.
And I'm pretty sure I already know your number 1.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a good pick, by the way.
Thank you.
My number 2 pick for my second favorite horror movie of all time is The Thing.
Okay.
I think that it is the ultimate movie in terms of creating suspense, paranoia, a sense of dread. No movie does that better, in my opinion. I think that the conceit of the movie is brilliant. The fact that there's this creature that can perfectly mimic anybody or anything, and how you can't trust anybody, and that creates such a uh, such an atmosphere in the movie that it's
Well,
still talked about to this day. Like, who was the thing at the end? Is Kurt Russell a thing when he comes back from the like? It makes for a movie that you can watch over and over and over again and never get bored of.
that's true. And every time you watch it, like you're always trying to figure out like how did the thing like spread?
Like, you notice more things and it's brilliant because like you notice things as you watch it and you're not even sure if you're really noticing something that's just in your brain, and you feel like you're one of the characters in the movie because you're trying to figure out who's who and what's going on. And all of that has nothing to say with the fact that the movie is also a brilliant monster movie.
Oh yeah.
Like, the creature design in that movie is fantastic. The gore and special effects are like second to none. Like, I really think that they're amazing. And Rob Bottin, who did that movie, I think he was only like 21 when he did the special effects on that movie.
Yeah, I remember when you said that to me, I was like, holy shit, like, what have we accomplished?
And it's
Nothing.
like the imagination of that, is brilliant. And I think, like, it's one of those movies that's full of great moments. Like, when the first time you see the dog in the kennel and what it does, it's like, that's when shit hits the fan. And I just think it's brilliant. Again, Kurt Russell's performance is brilliant in it. As you mentioned, John Carpenter's direction. It wouldn't be that movie without the suspense that he creates.
Yeah.
Through his directing, through his choice of shots on which actor he's going to shoot on. Because that's a movie where you can almost feel the direction happening as you're watching it. Because you're like, well, why is he going over there? Like, are we supposed to think like he's a thing, or what's going on here? Like, the way that the camera moves, the way that the shots are edited, that creates paranoia outside of the script or the plot of what's actually going on in the movie. And that's why I think it's an amazing horror movie, because the movie element is what makes it. Like, I don't think that story would be the same if it was like a play or something. You
need to have those unique camera angles to
the things
add
that
the layers of suspense. Yeah, for sure.
So The Thing is my number 2, and I just think it's brilliant. So,
well, good pick. That was one of my honorable mentions, and if I'm going to be completely honest, it was a prime contender of being in my OG list as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I think it's a movie that we both love a lot.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Okay, well, Marlena, this is it's gone down to it. We've said 4 other movies that we each love, and this is it. So, what is your favorite horror movie of all time, definitively?
You already know the answer. Okay. My favorite movie of all time, and it hasn't changed since last year, is the movie The Shining. Yay! Okay, I don't know, man. Like I said last year, this movie...
And you mean the miniseries, like the...
Absolutely, the fucking miniseries. Stanley Kubrick who? Who's that bitch? No, I mean Kubrick's version, hands down. It's just everything about the movie I love. And I don't know, I think this movie is so great for me because this was one of the movies that, like, scared me as a kid. Like, to the point where, I was paranoid to look into my bathroom, behind the bathroom curtain, right? Because I thought there was going to be some dead, decaying woman in my tub. Like, that shit scared me for years. I couldn't even finish the original movie, when I was, like, watching it when I was younger. Maybe that's a good thing, because it probably would have fucked me up even more, but, like, still, I think I really appreciate that movie because, as I've gotten older, it's kind of cool to look back and be like, okay, this is something that scared me in the past, but now, like, I've grown to really like it and grow as a person and appreciate it from a different light, and I think that is really cool in itself. Obviously, there's so many other features to this movie that are awesome, like, Kubrick's directing style and, like, how he's getting certain angles and how he pans with the characters. I think that is really cool. Jack Nicholson's acting is just, like, superb in this movie. It is so good. It's so eerie all the time. Like, he has this just, like, essence and aura of creepiness, and, like, when I think of him as a character, especially in that movie, I feel like he could just snap at any time. Like, he could just go, like, fucking nuts and just kill somebody, and I'd be like, well, I expected it. But, seeing him progress like throughout the movie is just like, oh god, like I don't know, man. And then obviously you have Shelley Duvall, which is who is an amazing actress, and her role as Jack Torrance's wife is just awesome. And yeah, and then you have little Danny, which is great. And didn't you say he's gonna be in the? Oh my god, what did you read?
Well, he's like the character
Yeah,
of Danny Torrance is the main character in Doctor Sleep.
yeah.
So
So that's kind of cool for me just to see that like progress like later on. Like I
mm-hmm.
really like that. Um, for the movie The Shining, the setting is just, in my opinion, really scary. The fear of being isolated, and I don't know if, guys, can you hear this? Like, literally, it is thundering and lightning outside. This is just, I love
Too perfect.
I know, I love storms. But yeah, no, anyways, like, the setting of the movie is just, it's very scary to me, feeling trapped and, encapsulated, and I just don't like that. Like, I have a fear of being in closed spaces, like claustrophobic. So for me, that is very scary. Being in this area that's just like very confined. Obviously, it's a hotel, it's big, but just like
but it feels small.
yeah, because you can't escape, and I have a big problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it being winter time, and I don't like winter. So that's another thing. I don't know. It's just all around a perfect movie, and I will never change it on my list.
Yet you still like the book better.
Okay, yeah, but that's a whole other thing. Well, yeah.
You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to.
No, I want to talk about it. It's just that I don't know if you want to listen to this 3-hour podcast. Okay.
We'll save it for a different time.
Well, really quickly though, I prefer The Shining the book over The Shining the movie. Just because it goes into so much more depth, especially about Jack and, his progression through, like, being the caretaker and, his backstory. And I think you know what? Now I'm taking this back. If they were to put that into Kubrick's version, I don't think I would have liked it as much.
No.
Because they did do that with the miniseries, and I didn't like it as much.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Kubrick's version is just focusing on Jack as a character and just being creepy overall.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know.
That's
That in itself is a whole other podcast that, like, literally, I don't even need you, Connor. I could just go on and talk about The Shining book versus the movie for about 3 hours. But we'll save that for another rainier day.
Or maybe another snowy day.
Oh my god. Alright.
So that's it. Shining,
That's it.
Your favorite movie of all time. Favorite horror movie of all time.
Hands down. I didn't even think. Literally, when I was making this list, I was like, okay, so we have The Shining and Pause.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Well, let's hear your number one pick.
My favorite horror movie of all time?
Yeah.
Is 2019's Pet Sematary.
Are you fucking insane? Holy shit.
I'm just joking. My favorite horror movie of all time is Creepshow.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew it.
So, the reason it's my favorite movie of all time, my favorite horror movie of all time, is because when I think of horror, what does horror mean? Horror movies are when you watch something and then something scares you and you scream. And then whenever you're with an audience, you scream and then you laugh because that's the reaction you have to it. Mm-hmm. And that's what Creepshow is all about. It's all about the jolts with the screams with the laughs, the kind of heebie-jeebies. And it's so classic, like, horror that I don't think it'll ever be beat in my mind. Creepshow, it fits like everything I want from a horror movie. And it even goes back, it harkens back to how I originally got into the horror genre. I always say how I originally got into the horror genre was through Goosebumps. My love of that kind of fun horror where it's like there's a monster coming at you, but and maybe it does something and there's some morality tale to it and you learn something from it and it leaves you in some sort of cliffhanger, but it's still fun, it's still colorful, and that's what Creepshow is all about.
Yeah. And
it takes that in a more adult way where it feels when you watch that movie that the movie's kind of holding on to you and patting you on the shoulder when something happens and kind of being like nudging you when the scary parts happen. It's that kind of friendly atmosphere and where it's, I don't know, it's hard to describe. It's just pure horror to me because it's not scary in the sense that it's dreadful and it creates dread like The Shining does or like Hereditary does. It's horror in the sense that you scream and then you laugh.
Yeah.
It's that reaction. And it's fun. And there's monsters. And there's blood. And it's over the top. Because that's okay. Because horror isn't real at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, horrific things happen in the real world all the time. But you watch horror movies to get away from that. And that's what Creepshow is to me.
Well, yeah, because you're watching these horror movies knowing that you can overcome it because it is just a movie. So you can almost laugh at it. Be like, well, this isn't real. Ha ha.
Exactly.
You know?
And that's what Creepshow is to me. It is all those things and more. But aside from that, obviously, like you mentioned earlier in your number 3 pick, it does combine like some of our favorite people. Like it is ironic that even though we had different lists and different number ones, they were both Stephen King movies, and I think that says something about him as an author and him as a kind of creator of horror. But also, like we touched on Tom Savini, I think that this movie would not be what it is without his special effects. The creature of Fluffy and the crate is my favorite of the segments in Creepshow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big part of it for me. George A. Romero's direction, the lighting, all of that comes into it. And also, the other thing is it tries to be a comic book movie, like so many other comic book movies that I would say, like, comic book movies rule the movie industry today. But Creepshow is the most comic book of all the comic book movies because it feels like you're really flipping through the pages. The scene transitions are going from one panel to the other.
Yeah.
The lighting is what you would feel like if you were reading one of those old EC horror comics.
Mm-hmm.
So it does that so perfectly. And also, I'm a big fan of anthologies. I love when you take horror and condense it down to its purest form, which is that setup of a situation, something happens, like a incident, and then the payoff at the end. Like, each of the 5 short stories in Creepshow does that perfectly. And the big endings at all of them are each so fun, and I think that's why I like it, because it's like a horror movie that I love where that is like the big ending, but it's 5 of them in one, so it feels like you're getting 5 times the horror.
Yeah, that's true. And just
And
like the stories, like they're just so outrageous that it's funny.
And again, this is our favorite horror movies of all time. And if I'm thinking about favorites, I'm thinking about what is the one horror movie that I would watch
again
endlessly,
and again.
yeah. And it is Creepshow. It is that because you get those 5 tales in one. You get it's almost like going to a family reunion of horror. You're like, oh, there's Stephen King, there's Tom Savini, there's Tom Atkins, there's Adrienne Barbeau, there's Fritz Weaver, So it's so fun in that sense. And I think it will always be my favorite horror movie of all time. So yeah, Creepshow.
Cool.
My number 1.
That's awesome.
So
I think we both knew what each other's number 1 picks would be.
Yeah, did you think that was going to be
Yeah, because
one?
you've said it so many times. Like, not recently when we were making our list, but you're like, oh yeah, man, like, fucking Creepshow is my number 1 pick. And I don't know. I could see it coming.
Also, I think when you think about these, if it is favorites, you have to think about it also a little bit individually as well. Like, Creepshow is very much the kind of horror that I love. And I feel like for you, The Shining is very much the kind of horror you love, where it's more psychological.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, because I was just kind of analyzing our lists, and for me, like, my top 2, The Shining and Hereditary, they're movies that, like, you think about, and it's like, well, why did they do it this way? What does this mean? But for you, I find it's very, like, this is it, in your face, it's very colorful, very fun at the same time.
Well, I think... I did that a little bit too, kind of looking at my list and being like, what is it that ties these 3 together? And I think, 5 of these together. And I think it's monsters. I just love monsters. And in all 5 of the movies, Alien, the Xenomorph, Dracula's a monster, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Leatherface is the monster.
Yeah.
The Thing, obviously. And, Creepshow has like 5 monsters. And again, that's why I keep coming back to it. It's like all the bang for your buck.
That's true. I don't know. Now I'm just looking at my list, and it's numbers 1, 2, 4, and 5. They all kind of like can group together that like they have layers, and like they're more serious movies.
Mm-hmm.
And then Creepshow, my number 3 pick, is just like
It's the outlier.
it's the outlier. But I think I tie that towards you and that we've met like a lot of the people.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Here we go. We have our left brain and our right brain,
I guess,
which is kind of cool. So
a little bit.
yeah. Cool.
So yeah. Well, I hope.
Well, are you hoping to? What are you hoping for this next year for this podcast?
Well, I definitely want to go back to doing some more in-depth breakdowns,
yeah.
some more analytical stuff. I hopefully want to bring on more guests.
Yes, that'd be good.
My brother as well as others to talk about what movies they like and their favorite movies. I'm looking forward to a lot of movies coming out this year. It Chapter 2, Doctor Sleep, Midsommar, the Creepshow TV series that's coming out, Child's Play.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of things to look forward to in 2019 for sure.
What about you?
Well, everything that you've just said, I do think, yes, we should do a little bit more in-depth analysis, because like I always have a lot of fun doing that, and I don't know, I just learn more about the movies, and then it gives me a better understanding, and it gives me a different lens of looking through the movie that I really like. I like, looking at things from different perspectives. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just very, very interested to see how much we grow within the next year, because, listening to our first episode, because we listened to that, like, not too long ago, and oh my god, it was so bad. Like, I was like, Jesus Christ, I'm so awkward. Like, I'm still awkward, but I'm more awkward than that. But, yeah, it's really cool to just see, like, a year's difference, and, something that we were, like, kind of novices at. Like, we didn't even know really how to even put it on YouTube. And, like, now we can, like, record an episode and, like, boop it, and then it's up on the internet and, like,
for you guys to enjoy.
Yeah, in, like, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, which is just, like...
amazing.
Yeah.
And it's all thanks to you, Boo.
That's right. I am the...
You keep it together.
I'm the gears of this podcast,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, nice. Any final thoughts? Well, why don't we quickly, just for listeners, recap what our 5 are. So what are your 5 to 1? They were...
Okay, so for me, it was Nosferatu as number 5. The original Halloween is number 4. Creepshow as number 3. Hereditary as number 2. And The Shining as number 1.
Nice. And for me, mine was number 5 was Alien. Mm-hmm. Number 4 was what was it? Dracula.
Yep.
Number 3 was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 was The Thing, and number 1 was Creepshow.
That is a very solid list.
So is yours.
Thank you. High five. Wow.
Alrighty, well, I think I will sign off now. Marlena, where can they find us?
You can find us on all the platforms, such as iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube, all under the handle SpookNotes. Mm-hmm. Smash that like button. If you have any questions, comments, and hopefully no concerns, you can email us directly at spooknotes@gmail.com. And yeah, feel free to send us any of your favorite movies or any movies that you'd like us to, analyze in the future. We would always like to hear from you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's been a slice. Any last words?
I think we do have one last words. And that is, as always,
don't forget to cite the Spook Notes.
Bye.